Hi, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner.
And our dog, Betty White.
Your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Could we have named it something more creative? Probably. But it's the name of our blog. It's our last name. We're on an adventure. Yada, yada, yada. After owning our own business, working 24/7.
And don't forget a mental breakdown in between.
We made a lifestyle change and decided to make the most out of life.
We sold our house, most of our belongings, downsized, and moved to the coast.
We live life minimally, but fully.
We live each day as an adventure.
This show will help you learn how to live life more fully, with more intention, by experiencing more, and with less stuff.
We'll talk about our own experiences, interview others who have much to share by creating a spark in our lives.
Some days we'll share real-life ongoings of what we're going through, and others will talk about our favorite flavor of waffle.
Come join our adventure.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Jerry.
Of course, our golden girl, Betty White, is here with us. You might hear her snoring a little. And we are back for episode 75
You know what that is?
What?
75. The episode 75. That's your diamond episode.
It is a diamond.
It's the diamond episode.
Oh, I was just thinking, wow, 75 is just such a big number. I can't believe we made it to 75. And it is. It's a diamond episode.
It's the diamond episode. Yeah. It's a landmark episode.
Right?
Yeah. It's something that everyone strives for. And how appropriate today that our guest just shines bright.
Like a diamond.
Like a spark in our lives.
She does. Oh my gosh. It's going to be such a good show. I can't wait for y'all to listen to it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. First, let's get to our review of the week.
Well, today's review comes from Eloise9. Eloise says, this podcast is so refreshing. I look forward to the new episodes every Tuesday. Wow, she listens to it the day it comes out. Wow. Yeah. And listen to it while I take my morning walk.
She listens to it right when it comes out.
Right, yeah. Right. It is a great addition to my podcast rotation and should be to yours too.
Oh, that's really sweet.
That is sweet, Eloise. Eloise. Like Eloise at the Plaza.
Yeah.
In New York City.
Oh, okay.
Remember the old story? Eloise, do you know that?
I think I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, we love that. Thank you so much, Eloise.
And right down our alley. I mean,
I know.
You're taking that morning walk, listening to it, I think, too.
I know. I do. Yeah. I do listen to it when it comes out because I want to make sure that there's no
right.
There's no technical issues before I have to take care of it.
Walk while you're doing it.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, if y'all would like to give us a boost of inspiration like Eloise did, please head over to lovethepodcast.com/ArnerVentures and give us a 5-star review or rating. Rating, I should say. Well, rating is how they say it around here. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to support us, the podcast, and getting this content out to others who may enjoy the topics that we talk about.
Yes. And today is a very important topic with a very important guest. Our guest is Elaine Mendoza. Elaine is someone who aligns with everything we live for, making the most out of life without stuff.
Yes. Can't get enough of that. In 2015, Elaine became a minimalist and decided to travel the world. She's an advocate, and something we love is that she says that she chose the path she is on because the one written for her was not aligned with my humanness.
I love that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
You may have heard her TED Talk, which is going to be linked down the show notes. If you have not, you must, because it's a great TED Talk. We just loved this convo. We cannot wait for you to hear it.
You ready to get to it?
Let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Well, our guest today is Elaine Mercedes Mendoza. Elaine left her safe corporate job in 2015 to pursue a happier life with more freedom. We completely get that. Since then, she's traveled to so many cities and countries around the world that she's lost count. Her world travels have served as a classroom to help her heal the labels that were once in control of her life and that are very possibly affecting yours. She is a published author and speaker. We loved her TED Talk, The Power of Labels to Change Your Story, where she spoke about the struggles of being labeled an illegal immigrant and a member of the LGBTQ plus community. Elaine highlights how her life has been stifled as a result of others, Elaine, I cannot wait for this conversation. I'm so excited. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I look forward to this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. So we can get a mental picture because our listeners can't see this. Tell us where you're coming to us from.
I am currently in Mexico, and I usually come here when I'm waiting for another visa. So I'm just laying low until I get a response to move to Spain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What are you going to be doing in Spain? You just want to live there or do you have
Um,
something?
I've been traveling for 8 years now, and I'm noticing after the recent loss of my mother, the
Mhm.
need for a home base, a place I can always go back to. And Spain, after traveling the world, has been my number one choice.
Right.
It just
That's
resonated with me. Yeah.
that's wonderful. It's wonderful that you've experienced so much and you know where you're going to be your journey lies and where you're going to be most comfortable. And
Yes.
I know we talked before we got on here. I'm so sorry about the loss of your mom, and we rescheduled this so that you went to a retreat. Which I would you mind just talking about that to our listeners so that they understand what kind of retreat it was to help you through your grief process?
Yes, I went to Vipassana meditation. Now, Vipassana has been around. It's an entirely free retreat. It is sponsored by each person that goes, pays it forward with a donation, whatever they can afford. And you meditate 100 hours in a 10-day period. Of course, it's spread out throughout the day, but it's also completely silent. You're not allowed to talk.
Mm,
So the point of the Vipassana is to give you the time and the safe space to see life as it is and to accept any reality that you're having challenges with. So I went because I'm grieving, I'm still grieving, and I
mhm,
needed to process what the loss of my mother means in my life moving forward. So
mhm.
yeah, it's not easy, but I don't want you to think that you're sitting for 10 hours straight. I mean, there's breaks, there's breakfast, there's lunch,
Yeah.
they do it in a very manageable way. And yeah.
I'm glad that you said that because there are some meditation retreats that you go to and you do sit for hours and hours. I've heard, I've never experienced that, but I know that there's different ways of meditating in these different ways that you look at it. But I am glad that you talked about how
Yes.
you do eat and you get up and all of that.
Yes,
I would love to know more about it so that we can link down the show notes because I'm
of
sure people
course.
are going to be interested in it.
Yes.
Well, I want to get into, originally why we wanted to have you on here. There's so many reasons, and I wish we had more time. But we love the journey and the pivoting that people take in their life, and it's a mindset shift or whatever it is. And I know that before you had your sort of transition of your life, you had a nice apartment, pension plan, everything was kind of quote unquote safe
Yeah.
as people get very fearful of leaving what I call, and I'm using my finger quotes, working for the man.
Yeah.
um, but how did you pivot? What led to that? And I know that you identify. I don't know if you still do as a sort of a minimalist lifestyle, but
Yes.
okay. So I would love for you to kind of talk about what led to that.
I was, I'm from Washington, D.C. I grew up there. And
Okay.
uh, basically what ended up happening was I had a wake up call. I worked in the travel industry. I was a train conductor. I was one of the few female train
Wow.
conductors for 6 years. And
Wow.
also, as a single female without children, I am the highest taxed.
Hmm.
So I remember working one time through the Christmas holidays, and I worked Christmas Eve and I worked New Year's Eve, and I'm expecting a paycheck of about $5,800. I mean, this includes overtime, all of those union benefits, and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Out of those $5,800, and I'm working about 80 hours a week at this point, I received 2,800.
What?
Yes. So between the railroad fees and the taxes and all of that, I'm like, wait a minute. Why is it that I'm working 80 hours a week, but I'm receiving half my paycheck?
That is significant.
It is significant, yes. And I asked my other coworkers, I'm like, guys, is this normal? Like, am I the only one who notices this? And everyone is just kind of in their blind existence of this is just the way life is. And I'm like, no,
Hmm.
this isn't just the way life is. This isn't right.
Right.
And I also saw a lot of coworkers that would die shortly after retirement, of some terrible disease. And the way a railroad pension is written is if you die, you don't get anything. Neither does your family. So they just took that money. They just took it. So
wow.
it was a wake-up call for me. I'm like, wow, these people sacrificed their whole lives for this pension plan that they don't even get a penny if they die, if they don't even get to enjoy it,
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in learning from people that went before you, and I didn't want that to be my life. And I said, this is not the way life is supposed to be. This isn't okay. This isn't right.
You hear that all the time about people in other industries too, who retire and they get in this sort of, I don't know if you call it a rut, but they don't know what to do. And then if they don't do anything, a lot of times they end up, getting ill or even passing away. And so I think I'm glad that you pointed that out. And it also goes to life is short. You never know what's going to happen, so that you might as well enjoy the time that you have. This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth.
Sleep is super important to us, as it should be for you too.
You spend a third of your life in bed. Why not invest in making it a safe, non-toxic place?
Our top pick for sustainable, eco-friendly sheets, and Oprah's favorite too, by the way,
Enough said,
are Cozy Earth bamboo sheets.
The bamboo weaving prevents the skin from becoming sweaty, yuck, maintaining the perfect temperature and keeping you comfortable while you sleep. We love our sheets.
Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, head on over to arnerventures.com/Cozy Earth to grab our code to save 40% on your Cozy Earth purchase.
40%. There's no better discount code than that, folks. Even the Cozy Earth sales aren't giving you 40% off. I'm not even sure that Oprah gets this kind of a discount code. It's good for anything site-wide on Cozy Earth.
That is arnerventures.com/Cozy Earth to grab that link and code. It's also in the show notes.
Now back to the show.
Exactly. So I lasted there 6 years, enough to be vested in this pension, but I definitely did not want to spend my life focused on just work. And I think in American mentality, or in our country, work is the center of the universe. And I don't think that's healthy.
Right. I heard this thing recently. I don't know if it was on Instagram or where it was, but it was just kind of a quote. And someone asked another person, "What is your dream job?" And the person said, "I don't dream of my job. That's not my existence. It's not something that I'm dreaming about. What I dream about is experiencing life. I don't have a dream job." And I thought, oh gosh, that's so true. It resonates a lot with me, and I'm sure other people. So you decided you were going to, get out of that. And then did you say, well, you know what? I've always wanted to travel. I'm going to travel. And
yes.
How did you do that logistically?
Well, I was born in Venezuela. So I had this, if you watch my TED Talk, The Power of Labels to Change Your Story, I had this horrific experience with US immigration. And even though my family was legal and we followed all the laws, people don't realize that even when you're legal, you're still treated as if you're not. So you're still treated like a second-class human being or a third class. Yeah. So for years, I was kind of just stuck in the US waiting for paperwork. And as soon as I became a US citizen, which was in 2012, and my family first arrived in 1980, so you could do the math. Right. I mean, it didn't take me long to be like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Done. It felt like I was living in a prison, in an existential prison for most of my life, that the second I could get out, I did. And I just kind of never looked back.
Right. And so when you decided, okay, I'm going to get out, were you working any remote types of things, or were you just like, I'm going to just kind of experience things and then figure that out later?
I was saving money to buy a home in the US. And so I had some money put away. So I saved enough money for about a year to last a year. And in that year, I figured out some remote work. So I didn't go with a plan. I just kind of dove in. I just jumped from the cliff.
Yeah, I love that. I think that sometimes we didn't have a plan either. When we sold everything and moved here, we were just winging it. But I love that, because I think so many people panic about jumping off that cliff and about taking the next step.
Yeah.
And I think if you are really dedicated to having a different life and making the most of it and leading with a positive foot, then it really works out for you. I mean, if you really dedicate it, you know?
Yes. I just had to learn to trust the universe, because I think when we make too many plans and we want to control everything, we don't leave the space open for what's meant for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you left, and I know you talk about labels a lot, and I'm curious as an American, when you left, first of all, where was the first place you went?
Prague, Czech Republic.
Okay. So when you got there, did you immediately feel, I guess, a weight lifted about the labels, or were you still feeling that? And then did you experience that in other countries?
Oh, I felt a weight lifted, because in America, they give us so many labels, and honestly, labels are meant to dehumanize some people, especially if you're not white, if you're not heterosexual, you just get all this negative publicity that by the time I got to Prague, they didn't care. They were just like, oh, this is another human being. I felt like a person.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like a label. And I realized that even though externally the Czech may be very different from us, their language and everything, I realized that they're just people too. So no matter what label we give them, they're just people too. So it started to open my eyes to the fact that our differences are actually very superficial. They're just on the surface.
Yeah. Did you? I've talked to another guest who now lives in Paris full time. She's an American, and but anyway, she lives there. And she was talking about how look, with her there's racism everywhere, but she was talking about the difference in being an American Black woman and then going to other countries. She's like, it's very different. The experience is very different. Racism exists everywhere, but it was just a definite, absolute difference than in America.
Yes. I actually realized that if they think I'm American, I'm not always treated well. If I say I'm Venezuelan, they're like, oh, well, that's different. We actually like the Latin Americans. It's the people from the States we don't like too much.
Right.
And I did notice that. And I don't feel hypocritical, because I was born in Venezuela. My family has been Venezuelan for 300 years.
Yeah.
So when I say I'm American, that's the word that they use in Latin America as well, because the South Americans are very offended when they hear Americans. They're like, as opposed to what? We're Americans too. So there's always that problem with labels as well.
That's a good point. Yeah. I backpacked through college, and that was years ago. We're not going to talk about how long it was, but it was a long time ago. But I remember the books we would read to kind of get ready for it. I remember they would say, don't outwardly talk about how you're an American. And they would say, if you're going to have like a backpack or something, they even encouraged to put a button or a patch of the Canadian flag.
Yes.
What? I was like, oh my gosh. Like, so of course, then we led with a little bit of fear, and then it was fine. But yeah, even then it was sort of, I don't know if frowned upon being American is it, but that's how it felt. It was, we don't need to really outwardly talk about that.
Yes.
I
did notice here in Mexico, I was here. I come and go frequently, at least once a year or every 2 years. And I noticed during the 2020 elections or 2016, whatever it was, and some Americans were trying to pass as Canadians because they were very, they had fear that with the situation between our government and theirs, that they were going to be discriminated. And they would say, oh yeah, I'm Canadian. And I could hear a Boston accent or a New York accent. I'm like, dude, you don't have to lie to me. I hear the New York accent. You're not Canadian.
Right. So that's so funny.
it was funny. They're like, well, you can hide because, you're Latin American. They like you, but we just want to feel safe in Mexico and not be discriminated.
Right. Oh my gosh. We're laughing, but it's a real shame that you even have to do that. But
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Southern Oak Artisan.
Southern Oak Artisan makes 100% natural soy candles that are not only aesthetically pleasing, but are safe to breathe, since they are made with non-toxic ingredients, and they're not overwhelming like other candles you may be used to.
Between morning brew, lemon bake, lavender, there's just so many scents to choose from.
Southern Oak Artisan 100% natural soy candles are handmade in our home state here in North Carolina, but lucky you, they ship all over the U.S.
Yes, lucky indeed. Head over to arneradventures.com/Southern Oak Artisan, where you can grab our discount code and link to save on your soy candle purchase.
That's arneradventures.com/Southern Oak Artisan. It's also in the show notes.
And now back to the show. So would you say one of the most important, first of all, everyone should travel. It makes you a better human. It opens your world up. We're firm believers that no one is out of reach of travel. You don't have to have a lot of money. Just getting out of your city, it helps open up your mind. So that, to me, I always think, those are the most important things. But what would you say that one of the most important lessons that you learned from traveling was indeed about the labeling, or like what would you say?
I think the most important thing that I realized is that the way we see the world in the United States is a very small bubble. And then coming out of that bubble, you realize, oh, there's a big planet out there and we're all kind of the same. We all just want to be happy. We all want to be live in peace. Mm-hmm. And then our governments, I feel our governments fight each other, but I don't think the people are fighting each other. I agree. We believe what our government tells us. And I think there's always a lot of hidden financial interests and agendas, but the people themselves, they're very welcoming. I've had like 2 negative experiences in all of my 8 years of travel. 99% of my experiences with other cultures and people have been very positive.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really great. How often do you come? Well, I guess I don't know how long you've been in Mexico. I was going to say, how often do you come back to the States, or is that now changed where you've mainly been in the States? And then
no, I left with my Portuguese visa in 2020. So I moved during the pandemic. It was very. People thought that I was crazy, but I'm like, no, it was the easiest time to leave.
Sure.
So I only went back last year for 5 days just to physically say goodbye to my mother. I knew she was in the last stages of dementia. Mm-hmm. So I knew I wanted to physically say that goodbye. And then I left again. So I don't really make it a plan to go to the US unless I'm picking up a visa.
Yeah. Do you still have family in the US?
I do. I have siblings, and I have my grandmother, who my mom's mom is alive, and she just turned 103 2 days ago. Yes.
That's maybe that's good genes that you're gonna have.
Very good genetics.
Going back a little bit about how traveling opens your world up, and it affects cultural awareness and all that. You talked about how it is. You think it's the governments that are sort of against each other. Yeah. Do you feel that other people in other countries have more empathy towards, people that are outside of their country? Like, do you feel that, or is it just not, kumbaya?
Well, I've noticed that every country has their issues with their different issues with racism. So they all have. The racism is a little bit different because the US has a lot of diversity. Mm-hmm. But I started to notice, for example, I was in Portugal since I have a visa there, and I started to notice a little bit of prejudice against the Brazilians, for example. They have a lot of things to say. So I started to notice that hatred is a universal feeling, but I think each country handles it differently. So it's a bigger issue in the US than I've seen in other countries.
Okay, that makes sense.
Bigger issue, yeah.
Your TED Talk. First of all, I want to know how that came about, and then what made you, what inspired you to start sharing your story, your experience with, with what you have experienced as just a person, and then experiencing the labels, and then also the traveling and the minimalism. Like, when did you feel comfortable in doing it? And was it, we talked before we got on here about how when you're experiencing something like grief or something in your life, it does help to help others. So I'm now seeing it. Oh, was that sort of what you were doing? Or like, what inspired you to start talking and helping other people?
Well, I'm not a political person. I don't really talk about politics, but I did notice that when Trump was president, there was this kind of anti-immigrant, anti-Latinos feeling in the country. And I saw the laws that he was changing, and I saw a lot of negative publicity for immigrants. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, he's talking about illegal immigrants, but he doesn't talk about what happens when you do everything right. Yeah. You do absolutely everything right, follow every law, and you still get rejected. So I knew that my story was important to put out there, because I think a lot of people get this impression from the media and the news that immigrants are just breaking the laws and trying to take advantage of the country. And I'm like, wait a minute, but what about when you grow up in the States from the time you're 6 years old? Yeah. What about when your parents, I'll admit, I had a privileged upbringing. Mm-hmm. My parents paid for our college education. My parents paid for homes, paid property taxes. Mm-hmm. The only difference is that my parents weren't allowed to get any money back, even though they brought a lot of money into the country. So I felt it was important for me to share the fact that I went to college here. I was a performer. I went to musical theater school when I was younger, and I wasn't allowed to do any of that because the country decided that I wasn't born in the States. So, I mean, that crumbled my life for almost a decade and a half that I kind of had to survive.
Did the TED Talk come after you had started, because you were a travel blogger and are you still a travel blogger?
I'm still writing, and I still put stuff out there. Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about your book in a minute, but I know that the travel blog came first, right?
Yes, the travel blog came first, and I do it for fun, honestly. It's a lot of fun for me to give people information. And I think that what sets me apart is that I'm not bought. Like, no one's paying me to say that this place is great, this place is great. A lot of travel bloggers are sponsored, so they get there's kind of a conflict of interest. They have to say how great a place is. Where I'm just pretty much a traveler, and I share with you my most positive experiences. Yeah. So I think there's an authenticity there that I don't see in other blogs,
Yeah, almost like a travel diary of
Yes, it's like a travel diary. And I do get sponsors that want me to do something, and if I don't feel good about it and I don't feel like it's true, I won't do it. I won't do it. Yeah.
That's how we are about things. And it's funny when you start growing a community, an online community, brands will come and of course I'm making a joke when they say, oh my gosh, we love your content. Will you promote our panda socks? Like, have you looked at my content? Like, no way. So we're always like that too, that the moment you become, quote unquote, inauthentic is the moment that you lose your community, because they've come to I don't know, follow. I don't really like that, but they come to look at the content that you're putting out because they relate to it in some way, or they're getting something beneficial from it. And so, I hear you with that. It gets a little crazy.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to talk about, I really want to talk about the TED Talk, because I always think it's so great when someone, of course, is a part of a TED Talk. I want to talk about the prep and how were you nervous? Because that's a big stage. I mean, that's a big deal.
You have to realize that this was 2019. So it was before election year in the States, and it was in Florida.
Yeah.
So here I am on stage saying, I'm an immigrant, I'm Latina, I'm a part of the LGBTQ community. And I'm literally with possibly a very conservative crowd.
Yeah.
So it's important to say I was very sick. I was physically sick. I had bronchitis, which is, the universe has a sense of humor. So I think me being sick was just a part of the healing process. I was telling my story for the very first time in public, and on such a big, massive platform. So yeah, it was terrifying, but I also realized that it wasn't about me. It was about the bigger message of inclusivity, of like, dude, I am not the enemy. You guys, the stories make me the enemy.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I just said hashtag all humans belong. Like this nonsense of racism and discrimination that persists in our country and that politicians like to benefit from. We gotta start healing this at some point.
Yeah. What was the after effects of that? Was it positive or?
Yeah, I think it was positive. I noticed afterwards some students came to me, Latin American students, and one was crying and she gave me a hug. She's like, I've never heard my story told before. I always hear the negative press that immigrants get, but no one tells you the other side of the story, the way immigrants are exploited financially. And I mean, we're good enough to study in the States and bring money to the States, but then we just can't work there, or we get a 1-year work permit. And the legalization process is close to impossible, close.
Oh, well, we loved it. I mean, as soon as we even found out about you, I mean, of course we watched it and we were so moved. I mean, as two white people who can't really even, I mean, we all have labels, right? I mean,
yes.
But to be able to say it was moving, it was so moving. So I can't even imagine being someone who can relate to your story. I'm sure they were crying. I'm sure that they were just so related, but also just, like this outpouring of emotions. I mean, because we felt that way. So I can't even imagine, you know?
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's wonderful you shared your story. So thank you for sharing your story. Not enough people do that.
Yes, I knew that there was a higher reason for me to share it. And I knew that the right people will find it. And I think it's important to share that we're all equal. Nobody's more or less than anyone else. And labels just try to create a story around you. And I started learning as well, the label of white is also questionable because my family, we have Spanish roots, ancestors. And it's really funny when I come to Mexico or when I go to Spain, I'm labeled white. They're like, but you're white. And I'm just like, I'm in the United States. So it just seems really funny to me that I'm a woman of color in the US. And all these labels, I'm just like, what is the purpose of this? Like, why does it even matter?
Right. We had someone else on the podcast recently, and he is an artist, and he was talking about a little bit about labels. And just some of the things that he's experienced, but he talked about, I think the question was, what is the difference between, it was the elephant and the ant, I think. What's the difference between the elephant and the ant? Like, who's more important? And both have their meaning for being here. Of course, they both serve their purpose. And he's like, that's exactly right. And that's how humans should be. But his thought process was, it was the system, whether it's government or whatever, that puts those into place. And then, you can go on forever about why that happens. But gosh, yeah, it's really amazing that how does the animal kingdom have their way of life and they don't label each other. I mean, certainly there's predator and prey, but they certainly don't label each other,
Yes.
It's really interesting to dig into that research.
Yes. And I was fascinated to the point that I did do a lot of research. Like, where did the word minority come from? And all of these labels. And the more research I did, I realized that a lot of these labels are actually not even accurate, because the word minority, for example, gives you the impression that there's less of us and that there's more of you.
Yeah.
So that we're more powerful. I discovered the word minority is a myth. It's a complete and utter myth. When you look at Latin Americans, for example, Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world in terms of number of people. The first one is Mandarin. English is number 3. It's just that English has become this major business language, right?
Sure.
How are we a minority when we're the second,
Yeah.
language in the world and people. So
Oh, that's interesting.
the word minority is meant to make you feel small. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even true.
Yeah. Your book,
Mhm.
Humanized, Life Beyond Labels, when has it come out yet?
Yes, it's come out. It's
Okay.
actually, you can get it on Kindle. And recently I started promoting a paperback because there's a lot of old school people don't like
Yeah.
electronic
Yeah.
books. And I'm going to work on an audiobook next.
Okay. Oh, I love that. And you're going to do the audio?
I'm going to do my own audio. Yeah.
Good.
My
I always
pleasure.
love when the author does the
Oh, yeah.
audio. Yeah.
Um,
I think
mhm.
that's it's some people don't, like their voice or whatever, but to me it's like, but it's your words. I
Yes,
definitely want to
right.
hear your words.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. We'll link the book down below as well. So I think we'll get to your fast five questions.
Okay.
Number one, in the realm of travel, boat or plane?
Plane.
Okay. Number two, lying in a hammock or going for a walk?
Oh, I like both, but recently I lied in a hammock a couple days ago. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you have one where you are in Mexico or like you were just somewhere?
I was in Las Coloradas and the hotel just had hammocks everywhere. So I laid
Oh,
there for hours. It was amazing.
ooh, hammocks everywhere is a great vibe for a hotel.
Oh yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah. Okay, number three, wine or coffee?
Oh, coffee.
Okay. What's your favorite kind of coffee? Like, is there a certain style or,
Uh,
bean?
Cafe con leche is good, Latin
Uh-huh.
American style with lots of milk and foam.
Yeah. My new thing is, I don't want to say new, it's probably been about a year, is Cuban coffee. I think that
Oh,
now that I've had Cuban coffee, I can't even hardly have
that you can.
I'm like, no, the rest of it just tastes like brown water. It doesn't even taste to me, but
Yeah,
yeah.
good stuff.
Okay, number four, dine al fresco or indoors?
Mm. More times than not, I choose indoors because of mosquitoes, and
Yeah,
the mosquitoes really like me. So
me too. Me
I,
too.
li- I like the idea of al fresco, but I always end up going back inside.
Yeah, I'm the same. I really like dining outdoors, but yeah, then I end up going, oh, I gotta go inside. I can't stand this.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, number five, Jerry, if he was here, he would tell you he thinks this is the most important way to get to know someone. Ketchup or mustard?
I like mustard. I don't like ketchup.
Okay. And are you a yellow mustard person or like the brown and the spicy and
Either or. Any
yeah.
type of mustard, I think, is good.
Okay. Okay. Well, the most important question we think and we love to ask all of our guests is, Elaine, what does a life well lived mean to you?
A life well lived means having a lot of peace in your life, surrounding yourself with people that unconditionally love you without any ulterior motives, and living a life that is right for you. It has nothing to do with money, material things, status, followers. It's
Yeah.
just living a peaceful life with good people and good food.
Oh, 100%. I love that answer. And it makes me think about when, um, people still say about us that we don't live the quote unquote normal life. And it's like, well, why is your normal, like, why is that the way that you should do it? So I love that you talked about that, living life the way that you want to live it, as long as you're not harming someone.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
That's great. That's a great answer, a beautiful answer. Well, Elaine, please tell our audience how they can find you, how they can connect with you, your book, and we're going to link all of these down in the show notes. And of course, we're going to link the TED Talk because we think it's wonderful.
Sure, sure. You can find me. My website's finallylane.me. I like to do some public speaking for universities, conferences. I also do some mentoring sessions for people in big life transitions. And you can find me on Facebook, Finally Elaine. I'm on there. You can find me on Instagram, Finally Elaine, as well. And I'm very approachable. If you want to send a message, I always answer back.
I think they can probably hear through your voice that you're very approachable because I think your whole vibe is approachable. So I think that they can probably sense that. So Thank you so much. This has just been a beautiful conversation. I can just feel that you're a beautiful person. And I love your energy and everything that you brought to this. And we really appreciate you being here.
I hope we meet someday.
Me too.
Have some food and Cubano coffee.
Yes, we would love that. We would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that was great.
Right?
Yeah. Once again, somebody we can really align with.
A lot of our guests, God, I'm going to sound like such a nerd saying this, but a lot of our guests, the ones you're involved with and the ones that you're not, but when we are finished with I'd say the call, but the conversation, I'm kind of like, gosh, I really liked him or her. Like, that was so great. Like, I do feel like we have these guests who we would hang out with, right?
Yeah.
And then Elaine, you were not part of the conversation, but I remember when it was done, we always, especially people who don't live in the country, they're not in the country, she's traveling all the time. We were kind of like, okay, hopefully our paths cross. And I was like, I really want our paths to cross. Right. I really want to meet her IRL.
Yeah.
I just think that she is such a cool person. How inspirational. I loved her. I just thought that, I don't know, sometimes you leave these conversations and you're a better person for having them. And I feel like that with her.
Well, yeah. And I can totally see where you would align with sort of her whole journey and her values too. And, and well, really both of us, but yeah, I can really see you specifically too.
Yeah. I think, and I wondered if you were going to bring this up, that, she used to have a purse collection.
Well, that's what I was thinking when I said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, I had the shoe collection.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that when the way she reflects on her purse collection is like, ugh, like, I can't believe I was that person. Right. And I'm the same way. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I made a bedroom into a closet and just had all that crap. And, it just seems like, you're different people, but that person made you who you are today. So you can't hate on that person. You got to bring them with you, as Stutz says in the documentary. Right. You got to bring that old you with you because they want to come with you and be, along for the ride.
Well, it's like about having a growth mindset. That's what it's all about is you're just taking where you are and how can you move it forward. And you wouldn't be moving forward if you didn't want to change from what
That's
you were.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be somewhere and move forward all the time, right?
That's right. You got to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, because there's something 5 years from now we're going to be saying, I can't believe I'm looking around at things.
I know.
There's something here I won't be able to believe from 5 years from now.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Growth mindset, kids.
Yep.
That's it. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know of someone who would benefit from anything we talked about today, or any episode, our guests, or anything, please share it with a friend. It's a great way of supporting the podcast and us, and we really appreciate it.
Another way of supporting the pod is by leaving us a 5-star review or rating on the platform you're listening to us on. Oh, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button because that also supports us. We would love that.
You can always find us, links we refer to during the show, and any of the podcast sponsors at arneradventures.com or linked here in these show notes. And until next time, enjoy that journey you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Adios.
Arrivederci.
Au revoir.
Adios.
Sayonara.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Dos Vidiniana.